My name's Emily, I'm 29, and I've always felt like the odd one out in my family. I grew up in a small town in Ohio with my parents, Sarah and Tom, and my older brother, Jake, who's 32. We were the typical suburban family, Friday night dinners, summer barbecues, the works. But something always nagged at me. My mom has curly red hair and green eyes, my dad has brown hair and a stocky build, and Jake looks just like them. Me? I've got straight black hair, hazel eyes, and a slim frame that doesn't match anyone else. People joked I must have been adopted, but my parents laughed it off, saying I took after a distant relative. Last year, I got curious. I'd seen those DNA test ads on TV, Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, and thought it might be fun to trace my roots. I ordered a kit, swabbed my cheek, and mailed it off, imagining I'd find some quirky European lineage or maybe a Native American ancestor. My parents were skeptical when I told them, but they didn't object. A few weeks later, the results arrived, and my world started to unravel. The email said my closest relatives weren't my parents or Jake. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking, as the words "no significant match" glared back at me. I laughed it off at first, thinking it was a glitch, but a tiny voice in my head whispered that something was very wrong. I couldn't let it go. I called the DNA company, asking about errors, but they assured me the test was accurate. My mind raced, maybe a mix-up at the lab? I decided to test again, ordering a new kit, but this time, I secretly swabbed my parents and Jake too, labeling the samples with fake names. I mailed them off, my heart pounding, and waited. In the meantime, I watched my family closely. Mom seemed nervous at dinner, avoiding my eyes when I asked about our ancestry. Dad changed the subject, muttering about work. Jake just shrugged, saying, "You're overthinking it, Em." The second results came, and they confirmed the first. My parents and Jake shared 50% DNA, marking them as a parent-child match, but my sample? Only a 25% match with Jake, like a half-sibling, and no direct link to mom or dad. I felt sick. I confronted them that night, holding the printouts. "What's going on? Why aren't I your daughter?" Mom's face went pale, and Dad stammered, "It's complicated, Emily. We'll explain later." They refused to say more, leaving me with a pit in my stomach and a flood of questions. Who was I really? And why were they hiding it? I couldn't sleep. The next day, I dug through old family photos and documents in the attic, looking for answers. I found a locked metal box under a pile of blankets, its key missing. Inside, after prying it open with a screwdriver, were letters, handwritten, dated 30 years ago, addressed to a woman named Margaret. They spoke of a baby girl, born in secret, given up to protect the family. My birth certificate listed Sarah and Tom as my parents, but one letter mentioned a hospital in Columbus, not the local clinic where I was supposedly born. My head spun. Was Margaret my real mother? And why the secrecy? I called my Aunt Lisa, Mom's younger sister, hoping for clarity. She hesitated, then said, "Emily, some things are better left buried. Your parents did what they thought was right." Her evasiveness only fueled my suspicion. I started noticing odd details. Photos of me as a baby showed me with a different blanket than Jake's, and there was a gap in the family album from the year I was born. I ordered a background check on Margaret, finding an address in Columbus. The rain that night felt heavier, mirroring the storm brewing inside me, and I heard a faint creak outside my window, like someone, or something, was watching. I drove to Columbus the next weekend, my hands gripping the steering wheel, determined to find Margaret. The address led to a quiet neighborhood with a small, tidy house surrounded by overgrown roses. An elderly woman answered the door, gray-haired, with hazel eyes like mine. "Are you Margaret?" I asked, my voice trembling. She froze, then nodded, inviting me in. Over tea, she told me a story that broke my heart. 30 years ago, she'd had an affair with a married man, resulting in me. My biological father, she said, was someone powerful, someone who paid Sarah and Tom to raise me as their own to avoid scandal. She'd given me up, believing it was best, but she'd watched from afar, sending anonymous gifts. I was reeling. Margaret handed me a locket with my baby picture inside, tears in her eyes. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. But something felt off. Her story didn't explain my parents' fear. As I left, I noticed a man across the street, watching us, his face obscured by a hood. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, "Stay away from her. It's not safe." The drive home was tense, the rain pounding my windshield, and I couldn't shake the feeling I'd uncovered only part of the truth. Back home, the atmosphere was icy. My parents barely spoke to me, and Jake avoided my calls. I researched my biological father, finding hints of a wealthy businessman from Columbus with a reputation for secrecy. Margaret had hinted he was involved in shady dealings, but she wouldn't name him. One night, I woke to a crash. My bedroom window was shattered, a brick lying on the floor with a note tied to it, "Stop digging." My heart raced as I called the police, but they found no fingerprints, calling it a prank. Mom confessed tearfully that the man had threatened them years ago, forcing them to keep silent about my origins. The whispers started then, faint, in the walls, saying my name. I installed security cameras, catching blurry footage of a hooded figure in the yard. Margaret called, panicked, saying, "He knows you're asking questions. Leave it alone." I felt trapped, the secret growing darker, the rain outside a constant reminder of the storm closing in. I decided to confront my parents again, demanding the full truth, but their silence was deafening. The final confrontation came on a stormy night. I gathered my parents, Jake, and even called Margaret on speakerphone. "I deserve to know everything," I demanded. Mom broke down, revealing that my biological father was a corrupt politician who'd faked my death certificate to cover the affair. Margaret had been paid to disappear, but she'd kept tabs on me. The threats weren't just about scandal, they were about a hidden fortune he'd stashed, linked to me through a trust fund he'd never claimed, fearing it would expose him. The hooded figure, they admitted, was likely his enforcer, sent to silence me. As they spoke, the lights flickered, and a crash came from the kitchen. I grabbed my phone, the camera feed showing the figure inside, holding a knife. We barricaded the door, and the police arrived just in time, arresting him. He was a hired thug, confessing to watching me on orders from my father, who died years ago but left instructions to protect his legacy. The trust fund was real, millions, now mine, but the cost was a family torn apart. Margaret moved closer, and we're rebuilding a bond, but the whispers linger, faint in the rain, as if the past still watches. I keep the lights on, wondering what else they hid.